Hey there, fellow history buffs and conspiracy theorists. Welcome to our channel. Today we're diving into the mysterious and often misunderstood world of witches in the 1600s. Buckle up, because we're traveling back in time to an era of superstition, fear, and some seriously wild accusations. Get ready to uncover some fascinating facts that might just change the way you think about history. Picture this: Europe in the 1600s, massive upheaval, religious conflicts, political instability, plagues. People blamed chaos on witchcraft. Accusations soared, witch hunts surged. The Protestant Reformation and the Little Ice Age fueled paranoia. Printing press spread misinformation. Public hysteria ensued. Now let's talk about the role of religion in all of this. I mean, it played a huge part. The lines between the spiritual and the secular were pretty blurred. People believed witches derived their power from the devil, threatening society and the church. Religious leaders held immense power and influence. They shaped public opinion on witchcraft. Some sermons were downright terrifying. They painted vivid pictures of witches consorting with demons. These sermons had real-world consequences. They created a climate of fear and suspicion. Religious texts defined witchcraft and how to identify a witch. The Malleus Maleficarum outlined how to interrogate and punish suspected witches. So, you might be wondering, what kind of evidence led to accusations of witchcraft? Well, let me tell you, it didn't take much. We're talking flimsy, circumstantial evidence that wouldn't hold up in a court of law today. One of the most common accusations was causing harm to others through supernatural means. Did your neighbor's cow suddenly stop giving milk? Witchcraft. Did your child fall ill after an argument with an old woman? Witchcraft. It seemed like any misfortune, from a bad harvest to a sudden illness, could be attributed to the evil machinations of a witch. And it wasn't just about causing direct harm. Witches were also believed to have the power to control the weather, summon demons, and even shapeshift into animals. Basically, if something strange or unexplainable happened, there was a good chance a witch would get blamed for it. The truly terrifying thing is that these accusations often stemmed from pre-existing prejudices and social tensions. If you were an outsider, a social outcast, or simply someone who didn't quite fit in, you were far more likely to be accused of witchcraft. Now, when we talk about witch hunts, we've got to talk about Salem. The Salem witch trials, which took place in 1692 in Salem, Massachusetts, have become synonymous with the horrors of this dark chapter in history. It all started with a group of young girls who began exhibiting strange behaviors like fits, convulsions, and uncontrollable outbursts. Doctors were baffled and couldn't find any medical explanation for their symptoms. Naturally, in a time when superstition reigned supreme, people started whispering the dreaded word witchcraft. Soon, accusations were flying and the situation spiraled out of control. It's like the entire town was caught in a web of paranoia and fear. People were accusing their neighbors, friends, even family members just to save themselves. Over 200 people were accused of witchcraft during the Salem trials, and 20 innocent souls lost their lives. It's a stark reminder of how quickly fear and mass hysteria can grip a community, leading to unimaginable consequences. Alright, so let's say you're a 17th century villager convinced that a witch is lurking among you. How do you go about identifying this supposed servant of Satan? Well, they had some pretty interesting methods, and by interesting I mean completely bonkers. One popular method was searching for witch marks. These were believed to be physical marks or blemishes on the body, often hidden from plain sight. We're talking birthmarks, moles, scars, you name it. They believed these marks were left by the devil himself as a sign of his pact with the witch. Then there was the infamous swimming test. This involved tying the accused's hands and feet together and tossing them into a body of water. The logic? Innocent people would sink and likely drown, while witches, being in league with the devil, would float. Yeah, not exactly the most scientific method. And if those methods weren't bizarre enough, they also relied on spectral evidence. This was basically testimony from alleged victims claiming they had seen the accused's spirit or apparition harming them in some way. Of course, this type of evidence was highly subjective and open to all sorts of manipulation and false accusations. Okay, so you've been accused of witchcraft. You've endured the trials, the tests, the interrogations. What's next? Well, the punishments for those found guilty of witchcraft varied depending on the time period and location, but let's just say they weren't pleasant. In some cases, accused witches might get off with a lighter sentence, like imprisonment, fines, or public humiliation. But in many instances, the consequences were far more severe. Execution was a common punishment, and the method varied. Hanging was a popular choice, but some were burned at the stake, a gruesome spectacle meant to serve as a warning to others who might dabble in the dark arts. And it wasn't just physical punishment. Accused witches often faced social ostracism and economic ruin. Their families were shunned, their property confiscated, and their reputations tarnished forever. It was a fate worse than death for many. Now, if you look at the historical records of witch hunts, you'll notice a disturbing trend. The vast majority of those accused of witchcraft were women. So why were women targeted more than men? Well, there are a few theories. One explanation points to the societal roles and expectations of women during this time. Women were often seen as weaker vessels, more susceptible to temptation and influence from the devil. They were also associated with healing, herbalism, and midwifery, practices that were often viewed with suspicion and linked to witchcraft. Another theory suggests that witch hunts were a way to control and subjugate women who challenged societal norms or posed a threat to the established patriarchal order. Independent women, widows, and those who lived on the fringes of society were often targeted, seen as a threat to the status quo. Okay, so we've talked about the social and religious factors that contributed to the witch hunts, but let's not forget the role of folklore and superstition. These stories, passed down through generations, played a significant role in shaping people's beliefs about witches and witchcraft. Think about the classic image of a witch, a hooked-nosed crone with a pointy hat, riding a broomstick and brewing a cauldron of mysterious concoctions. These images, often rooted in folklore and mythology, help to solidify the archetype of the evil witch in the public imagination. Folklore also provided a framework for understanding the supposed powers of witches and the dangers they posed. Stories of witches cursing crops, summoning storms, and transforming into animals fueled people's fears and reinforced the belief that witchcraft was a real and present danger. The witch hunts of the 1600s left deep scars on the social fabric of Europe and America. The fear, paranoia, and mistrust that fueled these hunts had a devastating impact on communities, tearing them apart from the inside out. Imagine living in a community where your neighbor, your friend, even your own family member could accuse you of witchcraft based on nothing more than hearsay or personal vendettas. It created an atmosphere of constant suspicion where no one was safe. The economic consequences were also significant. Accused witches often had their property confiscated, leaving their families destitute. The trials themselves were costly affairs, draining community resources and diverting attention away from more pressing issues. Now, amidst the chaos and fear of the witch hunts, there were individuals who capitalized on the situation, profiting from the persecution of others. One such figure was Matthew Hopkins, the self-proclaimed witch-finder general. Hopkins was an English lawyer who, in the 1640s, embarked on a lucrative career of hunting witches. He traveled from town to town, offering his services to identify and bring witches to justice, for a hefty fee, of course. Hopkins employed a variety of dubious methods to prove witchcraft, including sleep deprivation, forcing confessions under duress, and using trickery and deception to convince people they were possessed. He was basically a con man who preyed on people's fears for his own personal gain. Well, there you have it, folks, a glimpse into the dark and often disturbing world of witches in the 1600s. It's a reminder that even in the face of fear and uncertainty, we must always strive for reason, justice, and compassion. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more historical deep dives. Let us know in the comments which fact surprised you the most.